two pieces here. We need a person to ask to do a thing, and we need a person to say yes or no. And if you don't say no and you pretend a yes, there are reasons that we do that are very valid. But if you pretend a yes, I don't feel it's fair to put 100% of the blame on the person who's asking, especially when we talk about context here, okay? Welcome to the Sex After Kids podcast, a place for parents to come and learn together about the sometimes bumpy road back into the saddle of their sex life after adoption, childbirth, or joining a blended family. I am your host, Sophia Ashley, certified sex educator and sex coach, mother and stepmother, and your totally TMI guide to becoming BFFs with your body and initiating easy, connected, and confident, naked, sexy fun times. Here we are, one part science of sex, one part mindfulness magic, and one part straight up real talk to help you find the spark in your relationship and yourself after kids. I am so glad you are here. Hello, my friends. So today I want to talk about duty sex. And I want to talk about duty sex because I think in particular after kids, we have all fucking been there. In particular women, but some guys too, I think, especially guys with lower libidos. And it is probably one of the biggest things that will tank your sex drive over the long term if you engage in it too much over too long of a period. And if you are in a place where there is a lot of resentment and anger around sex, and it's just something you don't even want to talk about right now, then this episode is probably for you. So what is duty sex and kind of why did I want to bring it up today? Well, I was scrolling through the gram as we all do and saw a study done by a sex educator just last year in 2024 by a woman named Cami Hurst. And it was about duty sex in particular. And in the study, she asked 1,000 women about duty sex. And duty sex is sex you do not want to have, but that you do have because you feel like you should, or potentially because you feel like you have to please your partner or to meet their needs. And I do want to say that for me, there is a bit of a distinction between duty sex and maintenance sex. To me, duty sex is where one person is truly doing it for the other person. And they may occasionally eventually get to a place where they're enjoying it, but true duty sex is like, I'm lying here, just stick it in me and get it over with. Or I'm really doing this like for you and your pleasure, but I have zero interest in this right now and I'm not really getting anything out of it. Maintenance sex is a close cousin, but it's a little bit different for me because to me, maintenance sex is where we have an agreement that we want to get naked on a regular basis and we're going to give it a shot. And more often than not, when we're having maintenance sex, we do get into it, we do enjoy it, or it does the job for both of you. So there's a more of an equality piece in it, whereas duty sex is very one-sided. So an example is like after I had my daughter, we had kind of a maintenance sex period that worked for both of us, which was just that we realized that we needed to get naked and roll in the hay about once a month. And I was never particularly craving it, but it was just sort of like someone was supposed to tap somebody else on the shoulder. It was never glorious. It wasn't about going for the gold. It just was about getting it done. But we always both felt better after we did it. We felt more connected. We felt stress release. We were just always like, oh yeah, we should have done that. Duty sex does not typically feel like that after you've had it. Duty sex, I would say, as someone who has definitely been there, again, like I said, just has a bit more of that, like, fine, just stick it in me and let's get it over with, which is very different vibes. And I know my experience of it in the past with past partners is more of like, You do it. Often, I would say the female partner, if she's engaging in duty sex, hasn't orgasmed, right? Like your partner comes, he rolls over, and then either there's an acknowledgement that it was duty sex and your partner kind of apologizes and is like, yeah, I'll make it up to you next time or whatever. Or there's just this big fat fucking elephant in the room because it probably didn't feel amazing for him, really. Like nobody really wants to have sex with an unwilling partner. Even if he orgasmed, like he probably doesn't feel great about it. Or the person who's receiving the duty sex. And usually the person who's giving it, certainly for me, it just is like this, rolling over. And like there's a sense of loneliness and disconnection. Like duty sex takes you further away from each other rather than connecting you. It has like the opposite effect of what we're looking for in sex. And that was really reiterated by this study, right? This study found that most women had engaged. So it was a study of women. So most women had engaged in duty sex at some point or another. And they described feeling pressure to keep the peace about sex. They wanted to avoid conflict about sex, or they wanted to avoid feeling guilty that they weren't having sex with their partner, right? So they did it so that they wouldn't feel guilty that they weren't fucking their partner. They would perform affection outwardly, but internally be shutting down. And that's that like disconnect, loneliness. And they also often described avoiding their partner around bedtime, avoiding touching their partner, or just avoiding their partner in general so that they didn't have to face unwanted sexual advances. And it's like the more duty sex you have, the more exacerbated this gets. The more I'm going to avoid sex because I don't want to be having duty sex because it has nothing to do with me. And then I'm just avoiding being around you, period, because anytime I'm around you could be an invitation to sex. The big outcome here is sexual resentment. It kills a woman's desire. It kills a woman's desire for her partner, like even appreciation or gratitude for her partner outside of sex, because it kills the things we talk about all the time here. It kills a sense of safety around sex. It kills your partner's sense of power around sex. And what I mean is like their sense that it gives them something. And it kills any joy that they get out of it. So it's all around like pretty fucking terrible. But like, how did we get here? Why does this even happen? And how do we get out of this cycle if we're trapped in it? Because I think, the longer we go without having sex, or the more often we have duty sex, the more often when we do have sex, it's duty sex, the more we're going to end up in this situation. And I'm sure, many of you listening are in this situation. So why does duty sex happen? Lots of reasons, so many reasons, but I'm going to focus on two really big ones here. And the first is patriarchal beliefs that hurt people of all genders because of the scripts that we have to play out around sex. So these beliefs share that like women are property and that their vaginas were made to make babies, not for pleasure. Patriarchal beliefs that rob men of their emotional intelligence and softness. They're born with those things. I can see them in my son, and we hammer the fuck out of them. And that is a loss for you men that are listening, that you can't access these parts of yourself anymore if you're struggling to access them. We teach men that their only value in a relationship is their sexual prowess, and that the only measure of their partner's desire for them is her sexual desire for them. So men feel like if their partner doesn't want them sexually, that their partner does not want them. They collapse those two things. And so not being wanted sexually is like this knife in the chest that it doesn't need to be, but because of some of these patriarchal beliefs that we've learned. Movies and cultural scripts that teach us that men are supposed to pursue at all costs and wear women down into wanting them. And that as women, we're supposed to tease and hold out, but that deep down our no really means yes. So these beliefs hurt men, women, everyone in any body. And many of us are acting out these beliefs subconsciously. But in short, how we think about sex, love, touch, and affection are critical here. And if we have never explored these beliefs, we can very easily be hurting people without knowing it. And this is the scary, not scary truth. Scary, but hopefully not terrifying truth about sex is like our lack of sex education leads us to a place where we don't know what the fuck we're doing. And then we hurt people unintentionally, but we still cause harm. And the thing to remember here is these are not excuses, these are explanations. I really want you to hear that, especially if you're a guy. These are not excuses. These are not excuses. They are explanations for why this happens. And if you are finding yourself with a highly avoidant, low libido partner, you may want to explore what the dynamics have been around sex in your house and what your beliefs are about sex and what it's going to take to shift it. And really, I am very happy to support you to do that. You can always book a free call with me in the link so we can kind of dig into that a little bit. But if you want to be having more sex with your partner and they are completely shut down, I guarantee you, whether you know it or not, some of these subconscious beliefs are controlling how you behave sexually and they are not getting you the outcome that you want. Women, I do want you to hear here that you also have internalized stereotypes about men and their sexuality that can be harmful too. And a lot of this comes from like expecting their sexual prowess and magic hands and all these things. And I talk about this a lot more in the Great Sexpectations episode. It's one of the earliest episodes of the podcast if you want to check it out. But just remember, we all internalize messages about how men and women are supposed to behave. And this colors what we expect of our partner and how we react to our partner. The second reason that duty sex happens is that we are all fucking shit with consent, my friends. It is all hip now. If you are on the internet reading parenting advice, I hope you are bumping into working on consent with your kids and teaching them like bodily autonomy and all that stuff. But we didn't learn that, okay? And we have got some pretty bad habits when it comes to consent in our relationships. We often feel a sense of ownership or access to our partner's body that isn't necessarily inherent, is one. But I think the other thing that like gets me about consent, that really frustrates me about consent, is we put a lot of focus on so-called like perpetrators, or kind of like the asker, right? So consent is a two-way street. It needs two people at least, and it needs two things. It needs a request and it needs a limit. And most of us are terrible with both pieces. And what I want to say is, there are absolutely situations on one end of the scale where it is 100% the asker's fault that there was not consent. But also, there are areas of the scale where the giver or the person who's being asked didn't set a limit. And there are reasons for that, and we're going to get into it. But we need two pieces here. We need a person to ask to do a thing, and we need a person to say yes or no. And if you don't say no and you pretend a yes, there are reasons that we do that are very valid. But if you pretend a yes, I don't feel it's fair to put 100% of the blame on the person who's asking, especially when we talk about context here, okay? So many of us are terrible with the request part. We want to have sex with our partner. We want to do something specific with them, but we are fucking terrified of the vulnerability that it takes to voice a request. Remember, these are not demands, requests for sexual connection. Because we are afraid of that judgment or rejection, we either don't ask at all and completely avoid it, or we don't ask, we just do the thing. So rather than asking our partner if they're into like choking play, we just choke them out of nowhere in the middle of sex. And it doesn't necessarily come from like an aggressive place of wanting to choke them. It comes from a place of like wanting to play with that, but being so nervous to talk about it that we just do instead. And so we didn't make a clear request, right? Or we ask in a fucking awkward way that often kind of backfires on us because it doesn't really inspire confidence in the other person. And so this looks like never asking for things, just randomly doing shit out of the blue and catching people off guard, or asking in such like a weak and nervous way that it can actually kind of like turn off our partner because they're there's a lack of sort of like confidence and leadership there. There is an art to leading here, to asking with confidence while being open to a negotiation or a no, and responding to rejection with grace. This is a skill, one you likely did not learn, and one you will need to learn if you want to keep a healthy sex life going for decades without duty sex being involved. These are not hard skills to learn. They just need to be practiced. And that's exactly what I do in the Naked Fun Comeback, which is my signature program for parents. On the other side, many of us are also terrible at the limit part. So someone makes a request of us. We should be asking ourselves if we are fully willing to give it, countering with a negotiation, so explaining the terms under which we would be willing, or counter offering what we would be willing to do. So let's say, for example, my partner asks if I'm willing to engage in a little bit of choking play. I might say, absolutely no. I might say, I'm willing to try that, but we need to watch a couple videos first about how to do it safely, and I want a safe word. Or you might say, I'm not really into choking on my neck, but maybe we could explore some other way of you kind of like dominating me a little bit, maybe like pinning my hands or my shoulders down to start, right? So you can do a flat out no, or you can negotiate around when and how you'd be willing to engage in that, or you can offer something else that's kind of in the same vibe or genre. So many of us are afraid of hurting the other person because they put themselves out there, or we're nervous about setting our limit, so we just don't. We push through the limit. We just do what our partner asked. And there are reasons for this. We'll talk about it in a minute. But where I struggle is like we focus a lot on the duty to ask. And that's fair because it is principally the person who wants to do the thing. It is their job to make sure they got enthusiastic consent. And it's not the other person's job to make sure of that. If you want to do something with me, you have to make sure you have my enthusiastic consent. However, it is the responsibility of the other person to set a limit, right? If they don't feel safe setting that limit, if it's dangerous to set that limit, then there are reasons they won't set that limit. And that's kind of a bit more of a ballgame. Now we're talking about like abusive and coercive relationships. But if you're with an otherwise well-meaning, caring partner who made a clear ask and you fucking pretend, you cannot put all the blame on him. This is about both of you in this dynamic. So why don't people voice their limits? Why don't they just say no? Tons of reasons. And I think first and foremost, I want to say like it can start out really well-intentioned, right? You engage in duty sex because you love your partner, because you want to please them, you want to meet their needs, you want to make them feel wanted, or you want them to continue to love and desire you. The amount of women I see in forums who are like, oh my God, my partner's so amazing and so lovely, and I feel so bad that I have no interest in sex and have no desire to fuck him. He deserves better than that, right? Like that can be the impetus for duty sex. And if that happens like once or twice, or if it truly comes from a place of like, I am not interested in sex today at all, but I am happy to give this to you because you need it for whatever reason tonight. If you give it as a genuine gift, it's not going to backfire on you in this same way. But if you do it repeatedly without return, right? Like if I was giving my husband a release every time he needed one without ever getting sessions that were entirely focused on me in the in-between, then that would not be feeling good. And I will say that often when we've got low libido partner situations, and I've been there was a period where I was like, I'll have sex with you, but you have to do all the fucking work. I'm not going to go down on you. I'm not going to give you a blowjob. I'm not going to put any effort in. You have to do all the work to make me orgasm, and then you can have intercourse with me. But I'm not going to do any of the work. And I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't put a lot of labor in. And that's not quite duty sex because he wants to do it. But I think the reciprocation of the exchange there after a while gets tainted. And I would start to feel guilty that I wasn't putting any effort in and that I was the only person like receiving all the good gifts of the effort there. So again, we just want to be paying attention to like which direction is the gift going in a way, and is there reciprocation either in that event itself or like on the whole overall. There's days where he's going down on me and giving me an orgasm, and that's all that's happening today, and maybe I'm doing the same for him, right? The slippery slope happens when you start to do it because it feels mandatory, because it's just the fastest way to get him to stop asking, because you feel pressured, because you will want to avoid a tantrum or pouting from your partner, because you're fucking tired of saying no over and over and over again, because you feel teased or cajoled, or because your partner's going to just touch your body like he owns it anyways. Like in essence, you start to do it because your limits are not respected. And there's an element of coercion at play. And this is what the study was looking at, right? Is we have kind of this scale of like out and out coercion and manipulation or pressure or force on the one hand, right? Like you will fuck me, no ifs, ands, or buts. Or coercion is more like I'm going to whine and pout so loudly that you didn't, that it will force you to do it with me, right? And that can be fully intentionally manipulated, or it can be slightly down. I don't realize that's what I'm doing, but it's what I'm doing, right? I'm using any strategy I can access to get the thing that I want. And if pouting gets me what I want, if throwing a tantrum gets me what I want, if threatening to cheat gets me what I want, then I get the thing that I want. But I didn't get the thing that I wanted in a, I don't know, pure or like correct or enthusiastic way, in the sense that my partner agreed to do it willingly and openly without me cajoling, teasing, pressuring. And the other reason it can happen, the other reason that we don't voice our no, is that often as women, and I have a whole episode kind of on trauma that I did, is this woman, Caitlin Press, she did this fucking amazing mini series on consent. I'll share it in the link if you want to listen. It was brilliant. It was called No. And she just talks about how, in her younger years, like it took forever to realize she could say no and to have the courage to say no. And then when she did say no, how it was like disregarded anyways. And so you may be the most respectful, awesome current partner, but if your partner has a past of her no not being respected or heard or like downright ignored, then she hasn't had good experiences with that in the past. And so she may default to fawning, which is essentially what this is, right? Pretending I want what you're looking for to get rid of the threat of you wanting this. And she might default to that without meaning to, again, because it can kind of be this subconscious pattern where she doesn't have that power anymore because of past experiences. So we need an asker and we need a limit setter, if there is a limit. Both people are responsible for that. And I think the thing that I want to say is like things get extra shitty if you are so convincing about your fake desire that your partner legitimately has no fucking clue that it's duty sex, like he actually thinks you want it, then you have to own the part you're playing in not being fully honest, essentially, with your limits. And also, we can get into places where there's just a lot of mixed messages. And the bottom line here, again, is if you're the asker, if you don't feel like your partner's enthusiastically yes, then you should be pausing and probing more instead of going, well, she said yes, so it's fine. But if you just like, you're like, she said yes, but I'm like, I don't know. It's your job to be like, I'm not feeling a full enthusiastic yes from you. Is there anything that could make it an enthusiastic yes? But sometimes we sort of self-abandon. I know that I did a whole episode about this where I'm like, my partner's making a move and I'm stuck in my own brain going, half of me wants to and half of me doesn't want to. And how do I make this decision and tip the scales? And how does my partner know that he's helped me to tip the scales in a way that's not manipulative and actually just supported me to like hop over to what actually feels good? So things can get messy here. I do want to acknowledge that. And I also want to acknowledge it is absolutely fucking fair and valid to resent and be frustrated with your partner if they use coercion, pressure, manipulation, guilt trips, and teasing to make you have sex with them. That is on this end of the scale. It is not good behavior, and you are allowed to, um, withhold your sex and affection from a person who is being that way until they're willing to change, right? And so again, I talk about it on a scale. On the one hand, we have full consent, right? Everybody is super enthusiastic about what's happening. On the other hand, we have total coercion and messy manipulation. And in the middle, we have a very messy place where essentially we have well intentioned, loving, but unskilled humans doing their best with what they learned about sex, which is fucking nothing. And I just want to be clear that that doesn't mean that the hurt is on a sliding scale, okay? How much we hurt people over here in the middle or over here on the end depends on the situation and the people who are in it. But the sliding scale does determine how we go about fixing the problem. If you're over here in coercion, that's very different than being here in the messy middle with a caring partner. And how you go about it is going to differ. The bottom line is the impacts of duty sex, of staying silent or of silencing your partner, consciously or unconsciously, are big. Most women in the study reported feeling anxious, irritable, guilty, ashamed, and resentful, right? Like I mentioned at the top, it absolutely fucking kills their desire for sex. It kills their desire for their partner, and it literally creates a heaping pile of resentment and contempt, which are two of the biggest factors for relationship distress. The consequences of duty sex for men, I think, can lead to a lack of confidence in initiating, right? So we can get to a point where we don't know if it's a true yes or a fake yes anymore. We can get into our heads about it. So then you don't ask, you ask with a lot of hesitation, or you just plow forward anyways, because all there is fear, doubt, and mistrust around sex. This is not fertile ground for loving vulnerability and for juicy sex. And I think that's where I want to say, like, this dynamic hurts both of you. If you're faking it and he knows or he senses it, and there's this big fat elephant in the room that no one's talking about, this degenerates really quickly, really badly, unless we get brave enough to go, hey, this sucks. This sucks for you and this sucks for me. Like, I want to be having sex we both enjoy. How do we fix this, right? And if we let it go too long, it just becomes a different beast to fix because we've got layers of resentment and harm to undo. So the sooner we catch this, the sooner you catch yourself going, oh, I'm having sex out of duty, not because I want to. How do I fix that? You talk to Sophia, okay? So what do we do about it? How do we get out of this mess? I'll first say, if you are with a partner who is totally coercive and unwilling to acknowledge this or work on it, there are many men who are kind of more in this, like, they manipulate and guilt trip, but they see it and they're trying to start working on it. But if they don't see it and there's no meaningful attempts to change, then you get to decide what you will tolerate, sorry, and if this is the kind of human that you want to be in a relationship with. Because if this is happening in your sex life, it's probably happening in other areas of your life. If you're somewhere in the messy middle, there's so much that can be done. And the bottom line is, our goal is to work towards you both learning the skills to get to the other side of the scale where full consent is happening. And that just means learning the skills of consent, which are communication skills and understanding your body, as well as deepening your understanding of sex so that you can confidently initiate and confidently set limits without guilt on repeat. And that is really at the heart of what we do in my work together with people, whether it's one-on-one or my little romance challenges or my signature program. It is at the heart of what we do, because once we get to a place where sex is easy, connected, and consensual, we're having naked, sexy, fun times. So if duty sex is happening in your relationship, whether you have been aware of it for a while or you are just waking up to this dynamic, you get to choose today, right? If this has been a pattern for a really long time, And typically that would mean you're kind of in a place where even talking about sex is tough. If the resentment pile around this particular topic is huge, you may need some help from a counselor or a sex coach like myself to kind of shovel it away and start fresh. And I just want you to know, like, it is possible if both of you want to get to a better place together, and if both of you want to clear the state and start fresh and start a new phase of your marriage where sex is something that brings joy to both of you instead of the opposite. It's totally doable. If instead you are catching the dynamic early, then a great place to start is just honestly to get brave and talk about it. And I have been there myself where I caught myself in that realm after our second, when my libido was much lower than after my first. I was engaging a little bit more often in just not so much that I felt coerced. It's almost like we can kind of force ourselves. We're like, I should be having sex this often, so I'll do it. Like it's not even that our partner has asked. Um, we just kind of cajole ourselves. Again, those beliefs and stories that we have about things. And I was just noticing that disconnect, right? I was like, okay, I'm noticing. I thought we were kind of going down the maintenance sex phase, like after our first. And then I was realizing, oh, these are not serving me. They are not giving me the, oh, that I'm glad we did that feeling. I need more. I would rather have sex less frequently. That's better quality. And so I caught that dynamic early. I got brave, listened to the communications episodes that I've got. I've got two of them. You know, the cost, what is it? You can't change what you can't talk about. And I promise you, he's feeling it too. And hopefully, a sense of relief will come from naming the elephant and figuring out how to divvy it up into small bites, right? And the easiest thing you can do here is just to commit to learning together about initiation, about consent, so that we don't let this pattern deepen and end up in a dead bedroom. And if you're in this place, then working with me is a perfect solution. That's what I do. I have lots of options. And if you want to chat, just send me an email. If your partner doesn't want to talk about it directly, whether you're the higher libido partner or the lower libido partner, I just want to say you can still work on these skills alone. So if you're the lower libido partner and the person who is doing, giving the duty sex, then you can start to say no more clearly if you haven't been saying no. You can start to investigate what you would need to say yes or what you would need to say maybe. And you can start to, set those limits and voice those limits. And you need help figuring that out because a lot of us are like, I don't know what limits I have. Then that's why I'm here. You can also step back from the messy middle if you are the initiator and start to ask for more clear yeses and nos. So if you're getting maybes, if you aren't getting like an enthusiastic yes, you can stop having sex with your partner unless it's an enthusiastic yes, and you can get curious about what would turn it into an enthusiastic yes. And again, these are things that we work on in my program. The skills of consent are actually really simple. There are ways to speak to your desires and set your limits that are sexy and hot. They don't have to be like awkward and embarrassing, like, do you like that? We can do this in ways that are fucking sexy. You literally just have to be willing to learn. If you want to give a little mini exercise a try, if you head to the Solve Your Sex Drive quiz, I'll put the link in the show notes. It's like a 2-second quiz, but at the end of every result, I have like a 15-minute couples activity that you can do, which will help you practice the skills of consent and communication. And it'll just give you like a bite-sized flavor for the types of exercises you can do to flex this muscle of consent. I want you to get out of the duty sex trap. I don't want you to waste another night having sex that doesn't fuel you and your relationship. I want you to be having naked, sexy fun times for as long as you feel willing in ways that feel amazing for you both so that you can stay together and show your kids what a happy, loving marriage can be. That is why we exist. I'm so glad you are here. If you have questions, if you want to chat, get in touch, and I will catch you next time, my friends. This is the part where we do the end bit, right? My friends, let's take a mindfulness minute here. Take a deep breath in. Open that mouth and let out a big, deep, full body sigh. Voila. Your nervous system thanks you. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope that your head and your heart have something new to consider, something new to talk about, and something new to try. No husbands were harmed in the making of this podcast, and a big thank you to my husband for his help and original music composition. Love you, babe. This podcast was recorded on the traditional territories of the Kwanlin First Nation and Tonquachan Council in Whitehorse, Yukon. We acknowledge and are grateful to the original stewards of this land where we get to play, live, and raise our children. You can catch me on the Instagram at the Happy V Project for tips, tools, and anecdotes. And you can also join the weekly-ish newsletter for dispatches from my bedroom and my brain. Also, head to thehappyvaginaproject.com to learn more about how you can work with me. Catch you next time.